Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do a furniture makeover. We're actually going to make over a couple of pieces, starting with this magazine rack. I found this at a thrift store, and generally I would pass it right by because we used to see these used all the time, and rarely do you see them anymore. But with the new style of decorating, the Cottagecore style, I thought this would be really cute with just the right color. And so I chose to paint this one, this really pretty color of blue from Dixie Belle, and it's called Stormy Seas. It's a little darker than I would like, but obviously I'm going to be putting some white wax over the top of it. So I think this will do really well with that color. Now these spindles, I really hate painting spindles. But this round brush does help a lot. It's just, I don't enjoy painting pieces like this, but I think it'll be really pretty when it's finished. So once I give this a coat of this Stormy Seas chalk paint, I do have to go back after it's dry and touch up a couple little areas. But other than that, one coat covered this. Now I'm adding some white wax after the piece is good and dry. And again, I don't enjoy doing this white wax over all these little spindles, but you know, it just has to be done. And I think it's going to be well worth the effort. Now I'm going to hold off white waxing that top because I have something else that I'm going to do to it. So I needed to wait on that. So once I get done with the waxing, just brushing it on and wiping it off, then we're ready for the next step. And this next step, I think, will add a really cute touch to it. I'm going to do a grain striping or grain sack striping. And so as you can see here, I'm just taking regular masking tape that I actually bought at the Dollar Tree, and I'm putting one strip down the middle. And then I take two other strips of tape and tape them right up next to that. And then when I pull that off, like I just did, then I have a good, clean, straight line. And I'm just using the drop cloth color here. And generally I use darker colors in my striping, but when I'm starting with a dark color, then I need something that'll contrast. And the other piece that I'm doing, the base coat will be, or the base color will be this drop cloth. So that will help the two of them coordinate. And so I just tap that on with my makeup sponge, and then just pull that off. And now for the next step, you have to let this dry well, and I did. But then we're just going to be taping right over that piece, but just kind of barely off. Now, what helps here is this is a dark piece and a light color, and this masking tape, unlike the painter's tape, I don't know if you can see here, but I can kind of see through it. So I can see how far over to go with my lines. So we're going to cover the stripe that we've done already, and then we're going to let it hang off just as wide as we want our next space to be, if that makes sense. You'll see when I pull it off. But now I want my neck stripes to be really thin. So I'm just kind of placing that the length or the width that I want my stripes to be. So we're taking, in case you couldn't see it well, we're taking two pieces of this tape and covering up the stripe, and it'll more than cover it, but the amount that it hangs off, if that makes sense, is going to be the space between the middle stripe and this next space that we've created here with these other two pieces of tape. And I think you'll understand it more when I pull this off. But now we're just going to tap that paint on there on those next stripes. And this is just, I have a stencil for this, but I don't like how it works because there's too much play on the lines. And And that may not make sense either, but there's nothing to hold those lines together, and so when you have a stencil that large, it just doesn't work. I wish I hadn't bought it, because this method is just, it works the best for me. Now once I finish this striping and let it dry well, I do go over this top with a white wax also, but I didn't show that in my video. And see, that makes those two little thin lines there, and it's such a pretty look. And now we're ready to move on to the next piece, and it's going to be a chair to go with that table. And so this is just a plain chair, and I didn't have to sand it because it didn't have any clear coat on it. As it turned out, I did get a little bit of bleed through, just oddly enough, on one of the spindles. So once it was dry well, I had to go back over that paint that I'm putting on here. I did 2 coats of this drop cloth, but I did have to later go back and clear coat that front spindle, and then put another coat of this paint on it. But here I'm just doing 2 complete coats of this drop cloth in the Dixie Belle. And again, this is the same color that I put on my striping on the table. And it's also the same color of the fabric that I'm going to be using to cover this seat, because I'm actually going to be using drop cloth. So once I get this painted and let it dry well, then I'm ready to do my seat. And I start out with this, with just enough fabric to cover this with maybe a couple inches all the way around, just so I have plenty of room to get it covered. But then I go ahead and put my stripe down the middle of this just for placement, and then I take it off so I have this hard surface. But I just put that strip of tape down the middle, and just like I did the other, then I put 2 stripes down the side, and then pull that one in the middle off so that I have a good clean line. And then the same exact process that I used on the other one, I'll be doing on this one. And like I said, I pull those down, put those down the side, pull that middle one off, and as you can see here, that sticks really well. That tape sticks really well to this drop cloth, almost too well. And here my striping is going to be the same color that I put on the table. So I'll be painting it with the Stormy Seas from Dixie Belle. And again, I'm using my makeup sponge and just dab that paint on there. And then I'll be able to pull those strips off, and I'll have a good clean line. And again, it did stick very well. So just like with the other striping, let that dry well, and then we'll be able to just tape over it and do the same process that we did with the last one. And also another way that might be a little easier with this than just trying to judge where you tape over this line on the next step would be to use a thicker tape for this part, and then you could just kind of straddle that stripe. But I didn't have a thicker tape here, so I'm just kind of guesstimating where I want it. And as you can see here a little bit better in this one, you can see through this and be able to tell how thick your line is going to be. This grain sack striping it makes a really big difference. It adds a lot of detail to your pieces and separates them from other pieces that you see. And see, as you can see there, that makes my line the width that I want it. And now I'm taking this next one and just giving myself just enough to put a couple of thin stripes down the sides. Here I'm just kind of moving that around a little bit to make sure I got it right. And then again, just dab that paint on there with that makeup sponge. And here you'll be able to tell how well that stuck, because I struggled to get that off there. But I did it without messing up my stripes. So then once I let that dry, then I'm going to add another detail to this seat. Now, I didn't have a stencil that I wanted, that I liked the whole look of, and I just wanted something right in the middle, so I'm only going to use part of this stencil. So I'm just going to stencil that bumblebee with the little circle thing around the outside, just in the middle of the seat. So I was just really careful where I placed this so that it would be right in the middle of my stencil. And I think that added a really cute touch to that seat. And now once I've let it dry well, and obviously you need to let it dry well because we're going to be turning it on its face here for this next step, then I go back and cover this seat pad with it. And so if you've seen me upholster before, then you know that I like to hot glue my my upholstery down first before I take it and staple it. And the main reason I do that, I guess it holds extra well, but the main reason I do it is because I want to finish it on camera here first, and then I'm going to take it outside where my hair stapler is, and just go ahead and put staples around it. But here I'm just covering those corners first. That's what I do. A lot of people do it the opposite way, whatever works for you. It might work better that way. I've never even tried it. But I just glue all this down, and then I trim off my excess fabric, and then it's ready to take outside and staple. I love to redo these little chairs because you can make such a big difference on them and use them as just an occasional chair to sit beside a table or something. My husband says that I buy too many of them, but when I make them over, they sell, and they don't take up a lot of space to store. So when I find a good deal, then I just buy them. A lot of times you can buy them for like $5, and I never pay more than that. Now here I'm just distressing, and I'm just using a regular baby wipe here, and I'm just kind of wiping it down good. Now, to be honest, I do have to go back and use some sandpaper on it, because where I've let this dry overnight, it's not as easy to distress with this wet wipe. So if yours works, just don't let it dry overnight like I did. And if yours works, that's fine. Otherwise, just use a little sandpaper. We do have a dark brown underneath this, so it has a good color. Even if you sand down too much, your wood is still dark. But once I finish sanding this and wipe it down, then I'm ready for the next step. And I'm trying a new product here. It's called the Easy Peasy Clear Wax in the Spray from Dixie Belle. And again, I've never used it before, so I tried it out here, and it was really easy to use. The verdict's out on how well it protects it, because I like for it to dry overnight before I see what kind of finish I've got left. As of now, though, it seems like it worked. But anyway, now I'm ready to spray this on, and so I just give it a good coat all over, and I did go back and do 2 coats, but I sprayed it down well, wiped it off, and then went back over it again. So like I said, I'll see how that turns out, but I think it's going to work. Now once I give this a good coat, a couple of coats actually, and wipe it down, then I go on to the next step. And I didn't film this, but I just put that chair pad back on just the same way I took it off, and I think that it made a really big difference in this chair. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope I've inspired you to create. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.